Hey everyone, I'm Lux, and this is True Crime with Lux. So today I'm going to be talking about the Long Island serial killer. It's going to be a little bit different than what I've been doing because it is still ongoing, but we're going to discuss the updates and Rex Heuermann. So I want to start at the beginning. When a woman went missing in 2010, the search for her uncovered 11 bodies. The community of Gilgo was shocked and horrified to learn about the discovery. Unfortunately, the case went cold not long after the bodies were discovered. It took until 2023 to finally get a good lead in the case and arrest a suspect. The death of Shannon Gilbert is what finally led police to who they believe to be the Long Island serial killer. So who was Shannon Gilbert? Born October 25, 1986 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, she and her 3 younger sisters had a rough childhood, and when they were young, their mother left their father and moved them to New York. After the move, Shannon started having bad mood swings and an eating disorder. Instead of her mother Mary getting her any type of help, she instead put Shannon in foster care. This confused Shannon because she still went to the same school as her sister, so she was hurt and confused, and she tried to run away from her foster homes to go back to her mom, but Mary always took her back and never really explained to her why. Mary tried to say it was Shannon's choice to be in foster care, but I don't see that being the case as she kept running away to go back to her mom. At the age of 12, she was diagnosed with bipolar, which explained her behavior. Back at the Gilbert house, though, it wasn't any easier on her sisters. It's said that one of their mom's boyfriends had sexually abused them. All of the girls had been traumatized from a young age. When Shannon finally reached high school, she started doing drugs instead of taking her bipolar meds, but was still able to graduate at the age of 16 and started finding odd jobs to make money until she became an escort. She had dreams of becoming a singer one day. While escorting, she met Alex Diaz, who was her driver. The two soon started a relationship. Due to them both using drugs, the relationship became very toxic, and during one of their fights, Alex hit Shannon in the face, resulting in a broken jaw that needed a plate to fix it. After this, Shannon decided to start posting her own ads on Craigslist for clients. She wanted to make a little bit of extra money on the side. She did start making more money this way, and she ended up getting her own place and started taking singing lessons. Mary really wanted Shannon to stop escorting and even offered for her to come back home with her. But Shannon said no, that she didn't have to work too often and she was making pretty good money. But in reality, Shannon wasn't making all that much. She got a new driver named Michael Pack, who she would have to give a third of her earnings to when she worked. She got a call on May 1st, 2010 from a man named Joseph Brewer who lived in Oak Beach. He wanted company for the night, so Michael took Shannon to his house even though it was 2 hours away. She got there at around 2 a.m. and Michael waited in the car for her. 3 hours later, Joseph came out of the house to ask for Michael's help, saying that Shannon was acting strange and he wanted her to leave. When the men went into the house, they found Shannon crouching behind the couch with her phone, and she looked terrified. Shannon had called 911 saying someone was trying to kill her. The dispatcher could hear the men in the background trying to calm her down. Michael thought she was probably having a bipolar episode and tried to explain to her that she knew him and she was going to be okay. When she wasn't listening, he decided to just go back outside and wait for her. But Shannon ran out of the house not long after him and took off down the street, still on the phone with 911. Michael tried to follow her in his car, but this made her more paranoid and she ended up inside a man's home asking for help. She soon ran from his house screaming. The residents could hear her, and some called 911 saying that a young girl was running and screaming through the neighborhood. Michael continued to look for her for over an hour, but wasn't able to find where she had went. So he went home, assuming that she would find her way back. Police soon arrived in the neighborhood to see what was going on. They took the statements and searched the area, but only found footprints leading to a marsh that led to Gilgo Beach. The next day, Shannon's boyfriend woke up to find she didn't make it home, so he called her family to see if anyone knew where she was. They said no and then called Michael to see what had happened. He explained everything, and her boyfriend went straight to the police to file a missing persons report and told them everything he was told by Michael. Police questioned and searched Michael and Joseph, but determined they were not involved in her disappearance. Police then used the 911 calls to track her movements that night. Her family soon went to Oak Beach to search for her themselves. They put up flyers and asked everyone if they had seen anything. They felt that due to her line of work, the police weren't taking her disappearance as seriously as they should. There was a detective named John Melia who took his tracking dog Blue out to the last known location of Shannon to see if Blue could track her. Unfortunately, they didn't find anything at the time. However, they did go back about 7 months later on December 11th. This time, Blue picked up a scent and led Detective Malia to an area where he found the skeletal remains of a woman wrapped in a burlap sack that had started to disintegrate. They thought they had found Shannon, but soon discovered it was another woman. So they went back to the area to search again, and they found another body in the same condition. Continuing to search, they found another 2 bodies in the area. All the women were determined to have died from strangulation. On December 14th, the police announced they were most likely looking for a serial killer. The first victim they had found was 25-year-old Maureen Barnes. She was born July 14th, 1982. She was a mother of 2 living in Connecticut and had gone missing in 2007. At the time of her disappearance, she was working as an escort. She was supposed to be meeting a client on the night that she disappeared. The second victim was 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew. She was born April 14, 1990 in Buffalo, New York. She would also turn to sex work when she needed money. And on July 10th of 2009, she was last seen outside of her apartment on her way to meet a client. The next day, her family tried to report her missing, but police said that she was an adult and hadn't even been missing for 24 hours yet. A few days later, police finally filed the missing persons report. The third victim was 22-year-old Megan Waterman, who was born January 18, 1988. She grew up in an abusive home until being placed in foster care. She was diagnosed with ADHD at a young age and got into a lot of fights in school. By 17, she had gotten pregnant and dropped out of school to have her baby. She then got into a relationship with a gang member named Hakeem, who forced her to become an escort. On June 5th, 2010, she went to meet a client. Now, normally Hakeem would go with her, but this night she went alone because the client had offered her $1,500 if she stayed the whole night with him. She was reported missing on June 8th by her family when no one could get a hold of her and she hadn't even tried to contact her daughter. The fourth victim was 27-year-old Amber Costello. She was born in October of 1983. She had a good family, but by the age of 5, she was sexually assaulted by a neighbor. After this, the family fell apart. Her mother was sent to a mental hospital, and her father became an alcoholic. When Amber was a teenager, she became an escort and started doing drugs. After a few years, her sister helped her to get clean, and Amber soon met a good man and got married. They adopted a son since Amber couldn't get pregnant due to what had happened to her as a child. The marriage didn't last long, though, and Amber soon relapsed. She moved in with her sister, and they started escorting. In September of 2010, she went to meet a client, but never came back. No one wanted to report her missing because they were afraid they'd get in trouble for the drugs and if the police found out they were escorts. These women became known as the Gilgo Beach Four. They all shared a pretty similar background prior to disappearing. On March 29, 2011, the police returned to Gilgo Beach to search again, hoping to find Shannon. They discovered a skull, a forearm, and a set of hands. They were identified as belonging to Jessica Taylor, whose torso was discovered back in 2003. They then found the remains of 3 more victims on April 4th, 2011. One victim was an unidentified Asian male who was believed to be transgender. The cause of death was blunt force trauma. Another skull and pair of hands along with a foot were identified as the remains of Valerie Mack, whose torso had also been found a few years earlier. The remains of an unidentified child were found in a blanket. She is referred to as Baby Doe. Then on April 11th, 2011, a plastic bag was found containing legs and arms. The victim is unidentified and referred to as Jane Doe 3. DNA shows she was the mother of Baby Doe. They also found a skull, which is referred to as Jane Doe 7. These discoveries terrified this community, who now feared they had a serial killer living among them. All of this was uncovered during the search for Shannon Gilbert, but the police had yet to find her. On December 6, some of Shannon's belongings were found, including her purse, ID, phone, jeans, and the shoes, in the marsh near the beach. Finally, 2 days later, Shannon's remains were discovered, just a few miles from her belongings. Police said Shannon's death was unrelated to the other victims. They believed her death was an accident, that she got lost in the marsh and had drowned. Her family didn't think that was the case, though. Shannon had been found laying on her back in a couple inches of water. The family had an autopsy done on her, but her cause of death was undetermined. But she did have a broken bone in her throat, which means it's possible she did die of strangulation. In 2020, the new police commissioner released pictures of a belt they had found near the area that had the initials HM or WH, depending on how you hold the belt. They hoped that someone would recognize it. Then in 2022, a Gilgo Beach homicide investigation task force was created in hopes of looking at the case with new eyes to see if they could find anything that would lead them to the killer. They used cell phone data to triangulate burner phones the victims had been contacted from before disappearing. They also used the various websites the women were on to find email addresses of their clients, and they found one that all women had contacted. It belonged to 59-year-old Rex Heuermann, who they now think to be a suspect. Rex was born and raised in New York as a kid. People said he was quiet and a bit weird. He went on to get a bachelor's degree in architectural technology. He's married to Asa Lara, who's from Iceland. He started his own company, which he named RH Consultants and Associates in Manhattan. His neighbors said the family was nice, a little strange, but nice. Investigators said his Google searches included a lot of searches for escorts and disturbing images of children. He was even looking up the updates on the Long Island serial killer case and images of the victims and their families, even trying to find where their families lived. They found surveillance footage of him buying burner phones. They also discovered that at least 3 of the victims disappeared when Rex's wife was out of town. During their surveillance of him, they got a sample of his DNA from a pizza box he had thrown away. It said that they found a hair in the buckle of the belt that had been found, and there were hairs on the other victims. The DNA of the hair came back to belong to Rex, and some even belonged to his wife. However, it's possible that her hair was on Rex's clothing, or he possibly brought the women back to his house before killing them. The transfer of his wife's hair can easily be explained. A secret grand jury indicted Rex on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder. He was arrested on July 13th. The next day, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. His wife has asked to be left alone by the media, but seems to be standing by his side, believing him to be innocent. Investigators have searched his office and his home, collecting all sorts of evidence. In January 16th, 2024, he was officially charged for Maureen's murder. His family was out of town during her disappearance, and the same for the disappearance of Amber, Melissa, and Megan. His phone shows he had contacted hundreds of sex workers over the past 20 years. He was then charged for the murders of Jessica and Sandra on June 6th. They found hairs on all victims that matched Rex. When they did the search of his home, they found over 300 electronic devices. On some of the devices, they found images and searches that matched the same ways the bodies were killed and dismembered. He even had made a list on things he needed to buy for the murders, things to make sure he was careful not to leave behind, such as DNA. He even made a list of where he disposed of the bodies and his victims list that was coded. He had checklists for what he needed to do before the murders, during the murders, and after. He was so concerned with making sure everything was done right, and so he wouldn't get caught. But did he not think about the fact that police are going to find these lists if they ever search your stuff? And how careful are you really being with your checklist if your hair is all over the victims? It just didn't make sense. You wanted to be so careful, but you did the opposite of what your goal was. So I will definitely be doing a follow-up on this one as the trial begins, as more information comes out. It's a little bit different than I normally do, but this case, I saw it and I just, for some reason, it keeps sticking in my head and I can't focus on another case right now because of it. So as I learn more, I will definitely put out another episode for it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and share it with your friends. Stay safe, and I'll be talking to you next week.